My sermon topic today is all about limits and how learning to embrace our limits is a deeply spiritual issue. And if you and I will let this concept of embracing your limits sink in, if we will grasp it on a deep level that goes way beyond the surface, then it will free us up. It will release us. It will emancipate us to live out and to enjoy and share our one wild and precious life that God has given you and me and each and every one of us. But let me warn you, especially let me warn all the type A personalities in the room or tuning in. And I know that there are many of you in the room and probably tuning in because it takes one to know one. You know, you're a little wound tight. You're a little competitive. You're a little rushed. You want to get things just right. And if you fall into that personality category, then this concept of embracing limits is going to be challenging for you and for me. And that is because we live in an achievement-oriented kind of society. Consider the American dream. Since our very beginning and going forward, the center of our country is this ethos. Everything revolves around possibility and success and achievement. And so you and I have grown up with these phrases that we have heard over and over and over. Aim high. Be the best that you can be. Just do it. And here's an old phrase, rags to riches. And it's been ingrained in us that if we study hard, if we work hard, if we will just keep at it, then we can accomplish anything we want. I'll never forget getting my first trophy. I was 8 years old. I was at a swim team awards banquet in the local community center. And it was a dark room, and I remember sitting in the back of the room with my family, and I was in my own little world. I never saw this coming. You know, even as a child, when I got bored or mildly annoyed, I would just daydream and go to my happy place. So I'm in my own little world when somebody at my table, I guess it was a family member, nudges me and says, "Claire, go up to the front of the room and get your award." And as I made my way to the front of the room, I hardly recognized my coach. He was dressed so strangely. He had on a tie and a dress shirt, slacks, and shoes. The only thing I'd ever seen him wear was a t-shirt and shorts and faded flip-flops. So he seemed very strange to me, but he reached out to shake my hand, and he handed me my trophy, and he announced that I was the most improved swimmer of the year. And I've been chasing after trophies and accomplishments ever since. Let me just give you a glimpse into my world when I'm trying to experience what I would call downtime, when I'm not working on the church or thinking about the church or planning, when I'm just trying to relax. Let me show you what that tends to look like. I might be at home and I'm trying to sit down and relax, but out of the corner of my eye, I notice that there are a few dirty dishes in the sink. And before I can relax, I have to go to the sink, put those dishes in the dishwasher, and then I'll try to sit down to relax again. But then I notice out of the corner of my other eye, on the screen of my television that is completely dark and turned off, there's a thin layer of dust. And it's hard for me not to go wipe it away before I relax. And then there's this great thing called the internet. And when I'm not researching something for work, for something church-related, this is what I do when I'm having downtime. I research things about how to improve. Like I love self-improvement articles and podcasts. And I will research on how to improve. What can I prove? Oh, let me research on how to improve my forward stroke while sea kayaking. Let me research how to improve my mental wellness or how to improve my sleep hygiene. I will research things like how to better organize, not my bedroom closet, but my storage closets. How can I run more efficiently? How can I learn to have more meaningful conversations? How can I learn how to make my smoothies more nutritious and delicious? And it goes on and on and on. I don't have to be a winner. I've learned that winning is rare these days. But I want to improve, even if it's gradual and incremental. Does this exhaust you? I've just learned, that maybe it's because I was the second born in my family. I learned that improvement is the way to go. But I know some of you are fixers. You like to fix everything. I've learned at an early age that this world is ever changing. You can't fix anything, but some of you think you can because you, like me, are so achievement oriented. You go around trying to fix everything. And when somebody comes to you wanting to share their problems, you immediately go into fix-it mode when all they want you to do, trust me, is to listen. We live in a fix-it kind of nation. And when we cannot fix something, we tend to hide it, beneath the surface. One of my favorite books as a child was that classic called The Little Engine That Could. I think I can, I think I can, I think I can. But what happens when we can't? Because we do. We all have our limits, each and every one of us. We were born into a certain time, which brings limits. You and I were born into a certain family, which brings limits. You and I have certain gifts. For example, I can speak all day. I do have the gift. I can speak all day in public, but the last thing you would want me to do is sing in public. I'll never forget one time my mother said to me, Claire, you have the best musical gift of all. And I was on the edge of my seat. What is it? And she said, appreciation. All of us are born into a certain body. My body happens to be, with shoes on, with heels, 5 feet 3 inches tall. Reminds me of that episode from the Brady Bunch from the 1970s. I grew up watching a lot of episodes from the Brady Bunch. And do you remember Bobby? He was the youngest son, and he was kind of short in stature. And so do you remember how he goes outside and he hangs from the swing set? And his older middle brother says to him, what are you doing? And he's like, I'm stretching my body so that I will grow taller. And his brother Peter says to him, well, if you're lucky, maybe you'll one day become a jockey. We all have our limits. One of my wisest instructors in seminary, he used to talk about the gift of finitude. Say that word with me. It's fun to say. Finitude. Now, this is the state of having limits or bounds. And what this professor would say is that you and I have been born into this world with limits, and they are God-given limits. God-given limits, meant to be appreciated. And we're born with limits because we are human. We are not God. Theologically speaking, the only person that is without limits is the creator of the universe, who is without limit and unlimited. And we learn about this in the very first book of the Bible, which is the book of Genesis. We read about two characters named Adam and Eve, and they represent us. They represent all of humanity. And they are enjoying paradise, this beautiful garden. And they have all these trees at their fingertips, many trees, and they are fruitful trees. And God says to Adam and Eve that you can eat from any tree in the garden. But then God gives one limit, just one. God says you cannot eat from this one tree, and it's called the tree of knowledge between good and evil, which really just means knowledge that only God has. You see, as humans, we can only know so much. We cannot know what the creator of the universe knows. So they're limited. They can eat fruit from any fruit, but just not the tree of knowledge between good and evil. But they are just so tempted, right? They want to be limitless. They want to be like God. And so they do what any of us would do, and they eat fruit from the one tree they were told not to eat from. And you see, Adam and Eve, what they go through represents all of humanity. That same struggle continues to echo in your life and in my life. It's part of being human. We struggle with our God-given limits, and instead of embracing them, we rage against them. And maybe you're thinking to yourself right now, well, I'm not as type A as you are, Claire. I'm a lot more chill and mellow. But I would ask you to consider where you're struggling right now. I know on every pew there's a bleeding heart or a disappointed person. So think about something in your life that is disappointing you right at this very moment. Think about something that's just hard. You don't know why it's so hard, but it's just so difficult right now. Think about a disappointment. What is hurting you? Because it probably, if you think about it beneath the surface, what it's pointing to is your limits. I cannot believe this has happened to me. People told me it would, but I just didn't believe it. I'm now 46. And once I hit my mid-40s, I became suddenly, like out of nowhere, I suddenly became nearsighted, which means I can see close up just fine, but I cannot see far away. I'm looking at all your faces right now, but not with any clarity. And I could do something about this. I have been prescribed glasses, but I'm too vain. I can still fake it because I can see close up. It doesn't matter if I can't see far away. And we all know what a limit age is, especially after 40. But if you think about it, every decade in our lifetime has its limits. Think about a 5-year-old. Any child, 5 or less, how dependent they are. I have such respect for preschool and kindergarten teachers. You have to do everything for those little ones. But think about your 20s. That was one of the hardest decades of my life. Can I get an amen? At that time, my body was stronger than ever. I had received tons of education. I knew so much, but I lacked experience and wisdom. And so I was going about the world in a haphazard kind of way. Only because of the grip of God's grace did I make it. And then there are those of us, or those of you, I should say, that are in your late 70s or 80s, maybe 90s or plus. And you have all this rich history and wisdom and experience. But on a cold day like today, you can hardly get out of bed and put your own socks on. Snap, crackle, pop. If you're married, what a gift. But it brings limits. If you're single, what a gift. But it too has its limits. If you're a parent, I don't have to tell the parents in the room or tuning in that if you have small children, how it limits you. And what's the saying? I think it goes like this. Children, while they're at home, remain in your hands, but as they grow up, they remain in your hearts. And that, too, has a limit. We have a limit on our finances, our resources. We have a limit on our time, which is why we end every worship service with the phrase, life is short. I believe it was Gloria Steinem who said this. And she's talking about our time on earth, and she says, spend most